Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time and inform the most relevant, compelling, and challenging conversations. Here we offer first-person access to dynamic political, business, and public personality.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya Van Biesen, Canadian Club President for our 128th season. I'm very pleased to host the club's first event featuring Dave McKay, CEO of Canada's largest company. Our club continues to change and transform with the times. We're embracing technology to connect with members and guests wherever in the world they may be. We're expanding our networks and partnerships to enrich our offerings. And we remain steadfast in our commitment to you to bring the leaders and decision makers shaping the future to our podium, Canada's podium. Allow me to acknowledge our sponsors who make these events possible. Today's discussion is proudly sponsored by EY, BCG, and Blake's, and thank you all for your invaluable contribution. We are also very grateful that Canadian Bankers Association will again be our season sponsor and that Air Canada is returning as our official airline sponsor, hoping for no strike. We are proud to share that Canada's Forest Trust Corporation is our Smart Forest planting partner for the third season in a row. Through this partnership, we've planted and protected 1,250 trees to date, which is estimated to capture over 196,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide throughout their lifetime, and that's equivalent to over 1,000 flights between Toronto and Montreal, hoping for no strike. You can find out more about Canada's Forest Trust at canadasforesttrust.ca. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. So for details about our upcoming events, I encourage you to visit our website at canadianclub.org, and please consider becoming a member if you are not one already. We also offer access to our events on demand in case you want to revisit today's event or you want to see one from the past, and we encourage you to share information about today's event on the social media platform of your choice. Now, at our events, not only do we encourage networking, we want to hear from you. So please consider asking a question of our guest speaker. What would you like to know about RBC's transformation agenda? You'll find old school question and answer cards on your table, so please fill them out, and someone will be available to collect them from you and to give them to our moderator, Diane, up here on stage. And for those joining remotely, please hit the Submit a Question button on the right side of your screen at the appropriate time. And now I would like to call on Fara Casami, Global Client Services Partner, EY Canada, to introduce today's speakers. Fara, Canada's podium is yours.
Thank you, Tanya, for kicking off today's session and this season of the Canadian Club. EY is proud to partner with the Canadian Club as we continue fostering meaningful dialogue and innovative ideas that help build a better working world for all. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fara Casami, and I have the privilege of leading EY's relationship with RBC globally. In addition to being my longest-standing client, it was RBC who empowered me as a solo 17-year-old immigrant months before I even landed in Canada. In fact, much to the horror of my parents, I distinctly remember walking into the Place Ville Marie head office before stepping foot into my new university grounds down the street. I'm sure I'm not the only Canadian in this room who has deep historical ties with the bank. Now, let's fast forward to today's RBC. To describe the immediate market reaction to RBC's recent quarterly results as favorable would be like saying my 8-year-old daughter is partial to Taylor Swift. It's a bit of an understatement. The stock price of the 160-year-old company reached a record high recently. One industry watcher noted that while expectations of RBC's performance have been building, reality proved to be even better. This market reaction does provide us with a good starting point for today's conversation between Fortune's Diane Brady and RBC's Dave McKay. He doesn't really need an introduction, but just in case, Dave has been at the bank for 36 years, 10 years as its president and CEO. He's led the bank through an extraordinary period of growth and transformation, most recently the acquisition of HSBC Canada. Today, RBC is one of the largest banks in the world, and Dave was recognized as Canada's Outstanding CEO of the Year in 2022, among other awards and accolades over the years. Now, one of my personal takeaways from the bank's impressive run is that opportunity abounds. RBC continues to do the unprecedented successfully, even in a world where international order is fracturing, advanced technologies are disrupting, and societies are polarizing. It's a message Dave often underlines when talking about his company and his country. It also speaks to the resilience of the franchise and Dave himself. Dave's father passed away when he was 12, leaving his mother to raise 3 children while running their family business. Hope was always better than worry to her. The bank embraces the same optimistic spirit, which helps explain why RBC has committed $500 billion in sustainable finance by 2025 and established the Climate Action Institute for Energy Transition, and why it established RBC Future Launch, a 10-year, $500 million commitment to help youth prepare for the jobs of tomorrow. I've also personally witnessed Dave's own commitment through his sponsorship of the Business and Higher Education Roundtable. Now, joining Dave on stage is Diane Brady. Diane is an award-winning business journalist and author who interviews newsmakers for Fortune's CEO Daily newsletter and podcast. She previously worked for Forbes, McKinsey, Bloomberg Businessweek, The Wall Street Journal, Maclean's. What a resume. Distinguished guests, it's my great pleasure and absolute honor to welcome Dave and Diane to the Canadian Club podium.
Hello, Dave.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everybody. Normally, I like to start by talking about the different places you were at before you came to RBC, but I think we have to go back to puberty for that. And for Fara, too, you like to get them young. So let's...
36 years, I guess.
36 years.
Yeah, well, we're going to go searching, are we?
Well, no. Well, actually, you know what? Since we're here, let's just start with that. What did you want to be when you grew up? Tell us a little bit about some of your early jobs prior to you being hitting puberty and starting at RBC.
That's what everyone came for. I think I wanted to be. I was highly influenced by Jacques Cousteau. I grew up in that whole Calypso Jacques Cousteau area. Many of you are too young for that. So I wanted to be a marine biologist. I wanted to swim with sharks. That didn't work out. It sounds like a Seinfeld episode, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, my first job, like so many in my generation, was delivering newspapers. I had the Montreal Gazette route in my suburb of Montreal, and I had to get every paper delivered by 7 and catch the 7:15 bus to school. I started with kind of only 30 papers, so that was very manageable, and then got a second route added to that. I consolidated, I merged up to about 45, and then the Montreal Star, which was the afternoon competitor, went out of business. And then I ended up with 70 papers that had to be delivered before 70. Can you imagine trucking through Montreal snowbanks with 70 papers every morning, 5:30. That was a real lesson. The worst thing is you had to collect. And if you remember, we had to collect their receivables. It was slave labor.
But they just shut the windows.
I figured out that my sister was 5 years younger. She had blonde hair, blue eyes. So she started going collecting one week when I was at a basketball game. And she got twice the tips that I did. So we came up with this partnership that I would deliver the paper, she would collect, and we'd split the proceeds. And that was kind of the beginning of our
and then
empire.
It became Canada's largest paper route, I'm sure. That's all we need to know. Well, listen, you get into rooms we don't get to go. You talk to leaders worldwide. I think a good place to just level set the conversations. Tell us a bit about, what are the themes you're hearing? What do you think's overhyped or underappreciated right now?
I think the challenge is that we're overwhelmed by the complexity of what's coming at us. I see the stress on leaders around the world. I see the paralysis that it creates among many leaders, particularly new CEOs, as you're trying to pick the destination, your fear of picking the wrong path. When it takes the form of significant geopolitical change and you're trying to adjust to supply chain reorientation, moving from kind of a rules-based order to a power-based order in our society and reforming around that. We'll probably hear a little bit about that tonight. Might talk about that a little bit. You're seeing massive complexity around climate. You're seeing rules and disagreement around, we can't even agree on the rules and the path that we're going to take, and therefore we're operating at the margin of climate change, not at the core of what we should be doing to really affect that change. But the rules are so complex, and we're arguing about how we're going to make this transition, and we're losing valuable time. But the complexity that puts on top of every global business, I don't think through all this we've lost the conviction that we have to make this journey. We have to do it fast, but there's no agreement of what we're doing. Tech, at the end of the day, the massive changes just with machine learning and AI now quadrupled by generative AI, and that those large language models, small language models that we'll talk about, are affecting an enormous amount of change, and they're upending business models, including our own. And how do you figure that out in parallel? And then the financial leverage that we have in our system. So CEOs, leaders are dealing with these tectonic shifts while managing inflation, while managing economy, and you can see the stress on the system, and you can see the stress on our country, a small country trying to find its way in a world where scale matters, geographic scale, business scale really matters. So I see all kinds of flavors of challenge coming out. And what's the common theme across that is that whether it's country versus country, government versus industry, because there is a versus there, society versus its citizens, everybody's moving at different speeds and in different direction. Like this cadence, the flywheels are changing at different speeds. And when you do that, the gears don't sync. And therefore, countries are moving at different speeds on bank regulation. They're moving at different speeds on climate regulation. They're moving at different speeds on supply chain reorganization. And therefore, trying to plug in is hard.
Yeah.
And therefore, it manifests itself in a lot of grinding that's going on, and it's tough to get stuff done.
Let's talk about this country, because I was reading about on a per capita basis, Canada's basically been in a recession for some time. What do you think's holding Canada back?
Things aren't bad now, but we're definitely on the wrong path. And we've got to start making some fundamental change to get back on the wrong path. And all the signals are there, including productivity and GDP per capita, where we're investing our money. As one, I think Rob Asselin said, we're in a consumption-based incentive system to get back on the right path. I think we just lost my mic there.
Yeah, the minute you said incentive-based, was it? No. They cut off your mic.
Exactly, bigger powers. So what we have to do as a country is because of these power changes in the world, we have to figure out what the United States needs from us. It is so important because we're not in sync with the United States. We're out of sync with the US. And therefore, it's a very important overall market for us. We have to, tonight's speech will be some important signals for us as what's important to the United States. Canada has to get in sync and create value for our largest trading partner. And we're getting feedback from very senior people in the US is that you're not creating enough value. In fact, one very senior person said to us recently, a group of CEOs, you're not serious people. Right out of succession.
Canadians are not serious people.
About the issues facing the two countries.
Right.
Not that we're not serious people, and it was done with the utmost of respect, but the message was, you're out of sync with your largest trading partner. So you think about the messages that are here tonight and what's important to the US. Security is really important to the US. How do we become more relevant to their security infrastructure? For us, it could mean the Arctic. You know, the tens and tens of billions, I think, of $70+ billion invested between Russia and China in the Arctic. What's Canada's role in defending the Arctic as a transit, energy resources, mineral resources? The US is relying on us to play a big part in that. Our overall contribution to NATO and the budgets, the security agenda is huge. Resources. They need our resources. They need our critical minerals. How do we add value? How do we accelerate that? We've got regulation that's slowing us down. We even had a capital input from the US government into our own resource sector to get going, so we can get out of our own way. Energy. As we think about these power structures changing, the US needs us to supply Asia with energy. More natural gas, even through TMX, more oil. That allows the United States to feed energy to Europe, and therefore energy security is a big part of overall security. So what is our role? How can we play a role there? Technology, clean tech, food, climate's changing. The Midwest is drying out. What's the role that we can play in exporting food? So as you think about what the US needs, it actually lines up really well with what we're good at. We're just not getting it done. So the US needs less rhetoric from Canada and just more getting stuff done.
Well,
it's right in front of us.
Let's get beyond the rhetoric. Okay, so there you we have a room full of leaders here, policy leaders, business leaders. If you're a policy leader, raise your hand. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. But let's make it tactical before we get on to RBC, a little bit more about what advice do you have to this group as to what can be done now, just given the environment you're talking about?
Can I go back to one other thing Canada has to do? We need a competitive tax structure. And we're evolving from this tax or redistribution or consumption model again. We need to reward risk takers in our economy. It is so important. And recent tax policy is penalizing risk takers. It's not just tech companies, it's all of you. We have to reward and encourage risk taking and scaling our companies and not selling out. And tax policy is a big part of creating the incentive ecosystem. We start companies, but then we sell really early, particularly in the tech space. We sell to the Americans who come up and get this amazing IP for free, almost for cheap. How do we scale like a Shopify does? Tax policy, when you're small and trying to compete with the big guys, you can't just match. And we do that. When we're competing, you have to beat. Our tax policy has to be more favorable, not just equal to the US. When we're competing in the wealth space in the US and we're up against the massive wirehouses like Merrill Lynch and JP Morgan and others, we pay higher on the grid to win, and we win. But we can't just match Merrill Lynch. We have to pay up for talent because we're a smaller platform with less brand scale, with less cross-sell right now, and therefore you got to play a different game. And therefore you adjust. So I think, what does the US need? What does our tax structure have to do? And then what does a small company or a small country have to do? It has to focus and work together. And we really need to work together. We can't have this division between business being a villain and government there to protect everybody. We need to work together as a small country and accelerate to what the Americans are asking for. Accelerate our execution. So with that then, into what do we need to do? We need to find new markets. We need to not just rely on Canada, because Canada's not enough scale, even at 45 million people. And as we're trying to scale Canada, it's going to take a while. We're going to go through the hiccups of trying to scale definitely a little too quickly here with 2 million people coming into the country in 2 years or 2.5 years. It's a little too fast, and we're really struggling with that. But we'll get through that. We need to continue to look for new markets. It's absolutely critical. We need to, and you can rely on our youth. They can solve problems. And our youth have 10% unemployment. They're being left out. They're disengaging from our economy. They're worried about climate. They don't have a job. They don't think they're ever going to own a home. They're tired of what's going on, and they're looking elsewhere. We need to engage them. And just to give you an example of how powerful our youth are, we just finished our, I think, 12th program in our revamped summer student program, or we bring in
The
thousands.
kind that Fara did.
Yeah, like
Or
Fara
you.
did, yeah.
Yeah.
We have an Amplify program where we take 100 students and we put them to teams of 6. And on May 1st, we give them some of our toughest problems. None of them have ever worked in a bank. And we say on August 15th or whatever, at the end of your 4 months, you're going to present to management your solution to this problem. Go figure it out. And we give them one executive sponsor. Just go figure it out. No rules. And we file on average 4, 5, 6, 7 patents every summer. We come up with these great ideas when they present to us. They've never worked in our company before. They haven't even worked in the industry. But they're solving problems with a completely different paradigm than my generation has and many generations in this room. So leveraging youth into our economy, leveraging our immigrants into our economy, which we've done really well and have to continue to do well, you can all play a big role in that. You can set the tone as leaders in how you solve problems and how you lead. Look for new markets. Play for the long term. Don't give up.
You know,
It's hard. Keep pushing. And have ambition for scale. Like start with a big ambition for scale. We might get that at the end.
Well, I remember, you know, oftentimes when you talk on a personal level, we often talk about the character differences between Canada and the US. And I remember speaking to the then CEO of Morgan Stanley, who was Australian, and the word tall poppy syndrome came up. And he knew what it meant. I knew what it meant. None of the Americans in the room knew what it meant. I mean, is there something culturally as well that we need to think about? Or is it really just build the regulatory environment and they will come?
It's a great question. I don't know if everyone will agree. I agree with you. I think we don't celebrate success unless you score a goal or try to win the Stanley Cup. Not quite successful yet. But do we really celebrate, like you celebrate the success of leaders in the United States. American media celebrates success like there's no tomorrow. They'll penalize you when you don't do well. But I think America does a great job, and people have ambition for financial success, but they want to be on the cover of Fortune. They want to be recognized by their peers. You elevate leaders who are successful, and then others aspire to that, and you create a culture of winning and celebrating winning. We don't. We're skeptical of success, particularly because we're portrayed as antithesis to the economy, and we're sometimes portrayed as villains as business leaders. That's destructive. We don't need to do that. Why can't we have both? Why can't we celebrate success and encourage others to take risk and emulate success, yet we try to pull it down? So I think there is a psychology there that we could be better at, and we have to do it together. Media has to do it. Business has to do it. I think we
celebrate success, but we're better at chronicling failure, I think. Yeah, makes for good news. But you mentioned the speech, tonight's debate night, you know, with Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Donald Trump. What do you want to see? What do you want to hear?
You know, you're hoping for themes of fiscal balance.
Good luck.
Yeah,
good luck with that. Yeah.
Some acknowledgement of fiscal necessity that exists. You're going to want to hear acknowledgement of the roles that security will play, and then maybe how partners can play in that, I think, is really important. You want to hear the tone on trade, cross-border trade. Like I've always fundamentally believed that when trucks cross borders, tanks don't. And therefore, while we are reglobalizing, not deglobalizing, trade is incredibly important. We can't make everything ourselves. We are going to have to find partners we trust and continue to leverage relative competitive differentiation. And that's got to play some role in the overall. I want to see a note of American expansion, not retreat. I mean, China is expanding aggressively into Africa and to other markets. We need a strong America that's an expansionary global mode and protects democracy and stands up for the rules of democracy. I'm hoping for decency and decorum and integrity.
One
right?
common theme they both have is Buy America.
Facts matter.
Yeah.
Facts
do matter.
Our facts are the basis for our democracy. If you can't agree on facts, you can't agree on anything. So I'm hoping that comes through.
We'll check in tomorrow to see. But I do think the Buy America
You don't believe any of that?
Well, I think the debate format hopefully will help. But does it matter if Buy America is really the theme that both parties rally around? Because that is something that does seem to impact Canada and impact business strategy.
To a degree, yes. It has to be the lead issue, but then how do you execute it? I mean, it would be so inflationary for America to make everything. And therefore, they need partners. They need minerals. They need energy. They recognize that. So therefore, as a very senior U.S. administration person said to me, don't wait for us. Figure out how to plug into our system. Right? We're spinning hard, and we want people that create value for us and can plug in while we're moving fast. And Canada has to play that role, but we can't wait for them to invite us into the party. We have to fight our way into that discussion. And I spent a lot of time with Canadian business leaders who are fighting their way and winning in the U.S. system because they're creating value, and they've learned how to play that game. So I think from that perspective, certainly there's going to be a Buy America. But it's not solely Buy America. They're not going to make everything. And therefore, where do you fit in? And I think, as we just talked about off the top, there's so much that we can do well that's complementary to Buy America and what America has to do. They need allies. Right? This is not a go-it-alone strategy, even though there is an inward regression. I think both parties will come out and say there has to be some type of balance.
So let's move to RBC. We heard, of course, you're doing well.
Yep.
We'll look for insider selling
Record
if
high
anything
yesterday.
happens. But, but tell us more about how this is shaping your strategy.
Certainly. So we think about, let's just touch on the scale theme. Scale is absolutely critical, and therefore, what do you mean by scale? When I talk about scale internally, it's one of our core 3 pillars. It's operating scale in a world where margins are coming down, new competition's changing value chains. You have to be an efficient operator of your business, the most efficient. 2, data scale. Data scale drives generative AI, drives partnerships, drives reciprocal value across your partner. Data scale comes with client scale, is absolutely critical in the oil of the future. So you need data scale. You need balance sheet scale, being able to help the smallest to the largest customer, to be able to help them cross-border and all their needs. Balance sheet scale is something that we offer, being a $2 trillion plus balance sheet and one of the top 10 banks in the world. And then brand scale. Brand scale is we're building outside the country. We're doing well in the United States, but we've got to continue to build brand scale. So as we think about leveraging our scale for value creation for our customers, it's across all those dimensions. And particularly if we just touch on data scale. Data scale allows us to go to some of our core partners like Petro-Canada and Rexall and others and say, we can help you grow your client franchise. We can help create value for our customers and your customers. We've even built and patented in the United States a clean data room that allows us to merge data and then derive insight and then return data in complete privacy, never revealing who the customers are. Creating that type of value exchange and growing each other's franchises is what data scale can do across so many partners and customers. So I think data scale drives large language models. Small language models is going to create an enormous value in the future. So we're really focused on how we use data to think about not our business, but then where we need to move in the value chain. Example of the mortgage business, we just launched a home search engine. We feel if we just stay in the financing end and wait for the customer to come to us, there's going to be so many people in that value chain that will try to pull that customer off our path and try to offer them financing, that we have to integrate our business model now right through that customer discovery and search. And that's our philosophy, that we have to be in search and discovery wherever a client, whether they're starting a business, investing, starting a family, buying a home, buying a car, you need to move up the value chain to your customers into that search mode. And it's been successful. It's hard, but once you get it, then you have a completely reoriented value chain, and that's going to go off against, we might talk about the super apps and the worlds that the Apples and Googles and Amazons are doing.
Because I think that's interesting. You mentioned large language models. Of course, Gen AI can induce both paranoia and excitement. Where on that spectrum are you, and how is that shaping even just some of the business models you're thinking about?
It's both. I mean, it's going to be so transformational. It's going to change a lot of jobs and how we do those jobs. And we have to prove where information comes from to be, again, this is around fact and the derivation of some of those recommendations, those ideas. I think we're well on our way. Where I saw generative AI in California last year to where it is a year later, they've accomplished in a year what I thought would take them 3 years to accomplish in some of these basic models in OpenAI and Anthropic and others. that we're working with. So it's progressing a lot more quickly and therefore is an incredibly powerful tool. So I'm hopeful that we will balance the benefits with kind of the dangers to our overall society and democracy, and the confidence we have and the transparency we have, and where the data is coming from and how it's making its recommendations and decisions. So from the perspective of, you saw the announcement from Apple yesterday, and using generative AI to help create value and help direct customers in their flow. Ever increasingly, all your life needs are going to be met through a WhatsApp or super app like concept.
RBC will meet all of our life needs in one super app. That's the plan.
Or partner with others who
Yeah,
can. What was really important is we had the NFC chip opened up to the industry.
Mm-hmm.
We've been asking for that for a while as part of open banking. It's really critical that we have a level playing field, and therefore we are now more able to launch our own apps that can access the NFC chip on the phone and create an overall ecosystem of commerce that we were blocked from doing before. So with it, with that comes an opportunity to create greater value with partners, and fintechs can access it, banks can access it, credit union, everybody can access it. It's more of an open platform at a cost at the end of the day. The non-traditional competitors don't want to be a bank. That's too complicated, too much regulation, too much technology, too much capital. They just want all the margin from being a bank, and they get the margin from fronting the customer and getting between you and your customer. How do they do that? They do that through a super app that allows you to curate an experience, and then seamlessly offer products and services while you're on that life path. And we've learned from every industry that the easier you make it to consume, the less friction, the more you bundle value, the more you can massively disrupt an industry. And I spent some time, it's TIFF week, and we're very proud sponsors of TIFF and the content that comes through here. I was even in New York last week talking to one of the largest content producers in the world, and we were talking about the massive disruption of content, music content, film and TV content at the end of the day. And the power in that industry resided with the content producers for 100 years. It was the big studios, the MGMs, that had all the power of producing content, and the distributors were takers of that content. That power and the margin has swung to the platforms that control the distribution and rebundle that value for distribution. And the content, you see it in music, you see it now in film and in television and streaming. That power, and you have to worry from a super app, if you're able to rebundle value in a seamless way at the moment of truth, which is what they're trying to do, then you can rebundle pricing and you can move profit centers from here to here. And therefore, you have to think about where's your customer, how do you create that value? And we spent a lot of time thinking about that concept. So other industries have gone through it. We have to be highly conscious of rethinking our value chain, which we're doing. And it's exciting and challenging. At the same time, it offers enormous opportunity to create value for your customer in a different way and engage your customer, whether it's a wealth customer or a retail consumer customer. So that is kind of one concept of how generative AI is accelerating that. But it starts with, do you have data scale? Do you have customer scale? Do you have operating scale on the margin side? When you have those things and put them together, then you can create a really viable product. So that's why scale is so important, even in that example.
You mentioned content. I know music, you're famously a Pearl Jam fan. How many concerts do you see this year?
I've seen 2 last week.
2 last week, there you go. What about TIFF? Any films stand out? Or is it like every film is equal since you're a sponsor?
No, every film. I saw a bunch of films. I saw the Andrea Bocelli documentary. It was absolutely, and I didn't know a ton about him. I'm a Pearl Jam fan, so I've not paid a ton of attention to the genre.
They're not unrelated.
It was amazing going from Pearl Jam in Madison Square Garden to Andrea Bocelli this weekend. It blew me away. I mean, what a powerful story of courage and love between he and his wife, and he's completely relying on being completely blind, and the courage to go from losing his sight in a soccer accident at 12 to fighting through as a tenor in Italy, Pavarotti at the top of his game, and Andrea trying to come up underneath, and it was told brilliantly with using music and visually. I mean, I highly, highly recommend it. It stands out on the weekend. There are a bunch of good films. Elton John and others.
We have questions from the audience, and I'd be remiss not to point out that you've hit your 10th anniversary as CEO. And what challenges have you learned? What are the challenges? What have you learned from them? Impart sort of your tenure wisdom that you learn every day.
Just the most recent big challenge, obviously, was what do we learn from the pandemic? In the pandemic, we simplified our business. We simplified society into survival and health. That brought us together with government, and we focused, and we worked together in an unparalleled way. And we got a lot of stuff done, and we progressed as a society. We regressed in some ways, obviously, but we progressed through that. And therefore, as we came out of the pandemic, we kept some of that, but I've just seen it erode. So the lesson that we took from that, which we applied to the massive HSBC integration over the past year, which I couldn't be prouder of the team, and what we took on had never been done before, and to migrate all 1 million clients, every product, every system, every element of that bank in 48 hours, including the branches, flawlessly was just an incredible. But we learned a lot in the pandemic and how to team, how to use agile work, how to focus and put all your best resources on what's most important to you. So the pandemic taught us a lot about focus. And I think we have to bring that same lesson back to our society, that we should be teaming more. We should be working on Canada's big challenges to a greater degree, not in separate camps that we've gone to and picking at each other in public, but working together on our biggest challenges. It can't stop us. So I think we applied that into our focus and challenges, and we're able to pull off something as massive as HSBC because of that. So I think there's a great example of how you work, how you lead, how you take risk, and just right out of the pandemic.
I love this question. What advice do you have to the keen underemployed youth? If you're in the audience, raise your hand.
Don't give up hope.
Underemployed or youth.
Yes, you look at the generational challenges that we have in an aging society. While technology and healthcare is going to keep everyone around longer, which is great, it's going to create other stresses and less progression potentially. More housing stock needed for the same unit of population. If everyone's living longer and staying in their house longer, you're not turning it over. Therefore, you need more housing for the same unit of population, and we're kind of going through that stress now. It's not just more people coming into the country who need housing. It's all of that. I would say think carefully about what you study. I think we're producing a lot of students that have to be retrained.
What would you study? What would your advice be?
I do believe in
Plastics,
STEAM. No, science and technology, but also the ability to communicate and lead, right? So it is STEAM. It's not just STEM. We need to train both, but it's so important that we have to more productively train our teams. And I think there's a balance between. There was an article in the paper today about the value of post-secondary education, and we have to kind of reorient some of our programming to do that. But education is incredible, important training. The world is changing, therefore, flexibility of base skills, learning how to use technology is absolutely critical. And I think, are they going to be embedded into our curriculums or not? I mean, our curriculums have been designed for 100 years of transferring from one generation to the next society's knowledge, whether it's in the field of chemistry or biology or math or engineering or finance. You download the basics. Some of those are needed, but increasingly that's all been coded in software the days. So how do you take that knowledge and how do you accelerate the leveraging into value? I think is so critical. Knowledge into value, right? Data, knowledge, value. We're always thinking about how do you create value from data and knowledge. Otherwise, it's just a cost to your system at the end of the day. And I think our curriculums have to focus on that conversion.
Now we have about 5 minutes left, and I'm going to give you some time to give some final thoughts. But one of the themes that comes up in a lot of the questions here is really about how Canada can increase its competitiveness globally, and also a little bit about sort of the social change that we're seeing that I know you're very aware of. So give some thoughts. You talked about this a little bit, but given the concentrations of industry here, and the sectors. Where do you see new growth areas for Canada where we'd be doubling down?
Food. I think climate is going to change the ability for the world to feed itself quite significantly. We're already seeing that, right? We're seeing superbugs, we're seeing water issues. We have energy, we have land. And I always look at what Spain has managed to achieve with very little arable land, with very hot temperatures. They feed Europe throughout the winter through their hothouses. So we're seeing that emanate in Leamington. We're seeing, in Windsor, we're seeing great investment. We've got the energy, we've got the water, we've got the distribution capability. We have to get more room on our rail system for these exports. But there certainly is ability to grow our food and agribusiness to feed America, I think, and to feed the world, and that creates incredibly relevant value. We have to continue to leverage our resources. I think we have to green the world. We have to find new sources of clean energy. We can lead in both sides. We can lead in clean tech, but in the meantime, there is an opportunity to get more carbon out of the economy sooner, and we are in a race, right? Our planet is heating, and therefore we have to accept there can be transitionary energy sources. Particularly, Asia wants our LNG. They need it. It's cleaner than what they're using today, the amount of coal being burned. But we're fighting. We're fighting on taxonomies. We're fighting on rules of, should we or shouldn't we? I think we just got to get on with it. Like, we can't keep second guessing ourselves. So I think energy is a huge part of what we do. We have the best educational system. We produce amazing talent. We don't struggle to create new ideas and new companies. We struggle to scale. And we've been talking about this. What causes us to sell and to not scale? Is it too hard? Is it too risky? We have to scale like the Swedes do. They've figured out how to move from their core market of 6 million or 7 million people, which is the size of Toronto, to new markets. It's like they take their second breath in life and they're thinking about exporting their product globally. There's something do we need to have more internships that are international to create a greater focus? We have all these immigrants coming in who provide us with a national connectivity to their home market and an understanding of how Canada has to be global. So we should have it. Yet there's something that stops us. Is it tax policy? Is it the risk-reward equation's not off? We've talked about it in circles. We have to solve it. We have to do what Shopify's done. They have not sold. They have scaled, and they have fought hard, and it's been tough. But they're winning, right? It's not a perfect kind of ascension.
It never is. It's interesting. I think one of the good places to end is this question really about advice to leaders, in this time of complexity, but also a little bit of a personal reflection, because you more than most are navigating that complexity. So maybe start with talking a little bit about how you do it, and a little bit as to what others can learn from that.
I've kind of done two things throughout my career, and they're different from I hear others talk. And I've tried to analyze, if I ever to write this down, why. But whatever job I have since I started leading as an executive in this company, I can't say I did it from the first job in a ranch or a coder where I started. But I've always said, I want to be the best in the world at what our team is doing, whether that's running the credit card business or running the commercial business or running the retail bank or running RBC. I said, I want to be recognized as the best. And how would you measure that? And how would that look? So I think from that perspective, I always started with an ambition to be the best there is. Not unlike you're an Olympic athlete and you say, I want to be the best. I'm competing in this discipline. I want to be the best. The second thing I did, and this is what I look for in leaders, and I'll give you kind of how I measure leaders, is I set a bold ambition. And I declared myself publicly. And I've been in rooms like this where I got up and said, we're going to grow this business by 50 or 75%, and it's going to look like this after 3 years. And I saw people snickering in the back line, yeah, what's he talking about? He's on drugs and blah, blah, blah. And then you break it down. You say, well, what does that mean? Like, how many new clients do you need? Do you need new products? Do you need to take out cost? What are you going to do? And just chunk it down and make it digestible. And then figure out where your gaps are. And then rely on really great people. We took on all these goals without exactly knowing how we're going to get there, but knowing that if you set a goal here, you'll get here. If you set a goal here, Hopefully you get here, but if you get here, that's pretty fantastic. So when I look at the leaders across our company, and we have amazing leaders, I have a 4-quadrant grid I put everybody on. It's really simple. Personal ambition, organizational ambition. You want to be in the top right, where you have high organizational ambition, you state it publicly, but to do that, you need personal ambition often. That, I want to do this for the company, I want to grow by 50%, I think I can be number one in this product category, and I want to get recognized and I want to lead at a bigger level. And you want those people who are willing to take risks to get ahead. Conversely, you can have high personal ambition for title and leadership, but you're not willing to take the risk internally. You want to be recognized for playing it safe, for staying out of trouble, for being maybe a good soldier or not a good soldier. And those are the ones that can get you into trouble because they're seeking title without moving the organization forward. And they can be negative players, they can be neutral players, but you really have to look for those and call those out because it's about them first and maybe not even about the organization. The ones in the bottom left, no personal and organization, they usually find their way out of the organization over a period of time. And then you've got your real team players who have high organizational ambition, but they don't really want to get ahead. They don't want the stresses of leading, the public part of leading, but they want the company to win, and they're invaluable parts of the team. And therefore, I look at how the teams are composed, what types of leaders we have, and you're really focused on the top right and the top left. Right? Those are the ones that balance, and you put them together, which we do purposefully, and magic happens. Magic happens, and that's how you get RBC at the end of the day. So when I think about ambition, stating ambition, what you need to look for in your company, what you need to groom and reward, that's a little something I've done my whole career that helps put teams together and helps select the right people to move forward.
You and your sister on that paper.
And my sister, top left. Yeah.
I think that's excellent.
High organization, high personal.
Please join me in thanking Dave McKay. It's very fun. Thanks again.
All right, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Diane. So Thomas from BCG. Today, you shared a thoughtful and provocative perspective on how Canada can better compete globally and create prosperity for all. Dave, after hearing you today, if you ever compete for prime ministership, you'll have quite a few supporters in this room. Joke aside, you gave us great thoughts to reflect on our duty to contribute to Canada. I grew up in Europe, different context, but yesterday Mario Draghi just articulated a very similar case for change and a wake-up call for the whole continent. Fix the economy or start sacrificing. Now I'm fortunate to be a proud new Canadian, and you reminded me, and probably a few in this room, of the opportunity we have as a country to seize the moment and play a more influential role. You talked about the relationship with the US, you talked about the ambition for scale, and a few other things. You also talked about our obligation as leaders to do the right things and not just doing things right. So for all of this, thank you, Dave, thank you, Diane, and then I will pass it back to Tanya.
Thank you, Tomas. Before we close, I want to invite our audiences to join us for other fall events. And actually, before I do that, I just want to say thank you to both of you. That was a great conversation, so thank you very much. As we project forward, on October 8th, we will host philanthropic and financial mogul and chairman of Portland Holdings, Michael Lee Chin. So please have a look at our website at canadianclub.org for more details. As always, I would like to thank our AV supplier, VBC Live, for superbly facilitating today's event. Thank you again to our generous sponsors, EY, BCG, and Blake's for today's conversation. Members and guests, we look forward to you being a part of our next event, so please join us for a great season, and thank you again to both of you.